Naming cells and ranges allows you to create clean descriptive formulas and functions across different worksheets. We used named ranges with charts, data validation, dashboards, VBA, and much more. I am Nabil Mourad. In this tutorial, I show you powerful techniques for dealing with names and ranges, whether static or expandable. So let's dive in. Here is my start file. You can download the exercise file and follow along by clicking on the link below this video. There are different techniques for naming ranges, but all of them require selecting the range upfront. So I want to start by naming the range in yellow. I select it, and the first method is to click in the name box to the left side of the formula bar, and I'll be naming it yellow range. I hit enter for the name to stick. To name the range in blue, I select it as well, and to automatically jump to the name box, I hit Alt F3 and then I type blue range. I can use a different method for naming the green range. I select it, and this time I go to the Formulas tab of the ribbon and I click on Define Name. The new name dialog box opens. I'll be typing green range, and I hit OK. I have another method for bringing the new name dialog box, so I'll be selecting the range in red, and this time I'll be using the shortcut Ctrl Alt F3 and I'll be typing red range, and I hit OK. I named 4 ranges using 4 different techniques. If you want to see the names or select these ranges, you go to the down pointing arrow to the right side of the name box, select whichever range you want, and then you can select it. You can also use it in a formula by clicking on the Formulas tab of the ribbon and click on the down arrow using formulas, so you can provide any name inside a formula or function. I can also see all the names created in the workbook by using a rule called the 40% rule, which simply means if you go to the View tab of the ribbon and click on the Zoom button to open the Zoom dialog box, if you reduce the zooming level to anything below 40%, I'll be typing 39%. Look what happens. I'll be able to read the names of the different ranges at that location in the worksheet. If you have a list where each column has a column header, although you can use the previous techniques for naming each column, but you can simply use a built-in functionality in Excel that will allow you to name each column by using its column header. So I'm going to select any single cell in the list, and I expand my selection by hitting Ctrl A, where A stands for all, and then I go to the Formulas tab of the ribbon, and on the Formulas tab of the ribbon I click on Create from Selection. I'm going to close it. The shortcut for opening this dialog box is Ctrl-Shift F3. In the Create Names from Selection dialog box, I want to use the labels in the top row, so I take the check away from left column and then I hit OK, and I would have created names. If you want to check, click on the down arrow of the name box, and let's say I select region. Automatically Excel recognizes the entire column by the name in the column header. I can even use it in a calculation. So what if I would like to calculate the profit, which is the difference between the sum of sales and the sum of cost of goods sold? I can type a formula using these names. So I type equal sum and then I hit tab. I want to select the sales, so I type letter S. I find it in the IntelliSense list. I hit tab to put it in the cell, and then I type a minus sign. I type CO, and I can see the cost of goods sold. I select it by hitting tab. I close the bracket and hit enter, and this is the total profit generated. I can also name the columns simply by converting a list into a table. I select any single cell in the list and I want to convert it to table. I can use any of the 2 shortcuts, Ctrl L for list or Ctrl T for table. And in the dialog box that opens, I make sure that my table has headers is checked. When I hit OK, I would have converted my list into a table. I see the Table Tool Design tab. If you wish to change the style, you can select a neutral style like this one. When I convert a list into a table, it's a good practice to give a name to the table. So to the left side of the Table Design tab, I'm going to name it TBL for table, and I hit enter. By converting my list into a table and naming this table, I can use what we call a structured naming convention in formulas and functions. So what if I would like to sum the sales? I didn't name this column sales, but it has been named automatically by using the table functionality. So I can simply type equal sum and then I hit tab. I need to specify the table name. So if I type TT, I can see it in the intelligence list. I hit tab to select the table name, and to select the field within the table, then I type a square bracket, and from the list I'll be selecting sales. I hit the tab key, close the square bracket, and close the bracket for the sum function. When I hit enter, that's the sum of sales. The beauty of the table functionality is that whenever you add more records to the table, they are automatically included in the calculation, and this is what I'm going to do right now. I'll be adding some records by cutting them from the side of the worksheet, Control X, and pasting them to the bottom of the table. I select the first empty cell, Control V, look at the total, it updated automatically. When you name a table, what you see in the name box is the table name, TBL, but I don't see the individual field names, but I can use them in the same context that I used in the sum function. In the next example, I have a price list which shows a product, a price, and a color, and I named this range My Products. So if I click on the down arrow of the name box and select My Product, this range has been named already and I can use it in a VLOOKUP function. So I select cell B3 and I type equal VLOOKUP and I hit tab. What's your lookup value? One cell to my left, I want to extract the price of product 3. I type a comma, and for the array, I type the name of the range, My Product, and then I hit tab, I hit comma, and I want to extract the value from the second column, so my column index number is 2. I hit comma, it's an exact match, so I select false for exact, I can type 0, and then I close the bracket, and that's the price of product 3. What if I add more records to the range? Now if I try to extract a product from the end of the list, I go down and I want to extract the price of product 18, I get a not available error. The reason for this, the named range does not expand to include the newly added rows. And in this case, I need to modify the name definition by going to the Formulas tab and click on Name Manager, or I can use the shortcut Control F3. In the Name Manager dialog box, I can either edit a name, delete a name, create a new one. I'm looking for the range My Product and I want to edit it, so I click on Edit. Now I can select whatever I have in the Refers To box and then click and drag to expand my selection to include the new rows. When I hit OK and I hit Close, now the not available error is gone and I'm able to extract the price of any product. This is how we modify a name. In the next example, I want to create in cell C2 a data validation drop list using the list of names in column A. But I also want to be able to add more names to the list and have them automatically included in my data validation drop list. In other terms, I want to create a defined name and use it in creating my data validation drop list. This defined name should be expandable to accommodate for any more names to be added to the list in column A. I'm going to explain the function that I'll be using for creating the defined name. It's an offset function. The offset function will be storing a reference to a range. It has 5 arguments. The first 3 specify a starting point. Argument number 4 specifies the height of the range. Argument number 5 specifies the width of the range. I start typing equal offset and then I hit tab. Where do you want to start your selection? What's your starting point? I select cell A2 and I lock it by hitting F4. I type comma. Would you like to move the starting point any number of rows up and down? No, so I type 0 and then I hit comma. Would you like to move it right and left any number of columns? No, so I type 0 and then I hit comma. What's the height of this range? The height of this range can be calculated by using a count A function that will count non-blanks in column A. So I'll be typing count A and then I hit tab. I want to select column A and I lock it by hitting F4 and I close the bracket. The count A function is returning the height of the range, but it will be also including the label manager in the count. I don't want to include this one, so I type -1. And I finish creating argument number 4, the height. I type a comma, and this is the last argument of the offset function. What about the width? It's one single column, so I type 1 and I close the bracket. Look what happens when I hit enter. I was able to extract the list of names. What if I add more names? Would this list expand? Let's check. So I select these two names and I drag them to add them to the end of list, and my list expands automatically. Then I'm going to use this offset function inside a defined name in preparation for using it in a data validation drop list. I select the first cell, being a spilled array function. I select the function, Control X to cut it, and I'm going to create it in a defined name. I can click on the Formulas tab and click on Define Name, or I can use the shortcut Control Alt F3. In the New Name dialog box, I give it a Name Manager, and in the Refers To box, I delete whatever I have and I paste my function, the offset function that we just explored, and I hit OK. Now that I have a name, I can use it in creating my drop list, my data validation drop list. I select cell C2, I click on the data tab of the ribbon, and I click on data validation. I want to allow a list, so under allow, I click and select list. I put my blinking cursor in the source box and I type equal manager. When I hit OK, I would have created my drop list. Let me check. Here is the list. It includes all the names. If I select the last one and hit delete, now if I look at the list, it excluded the deleted name. The offset function has two issues. Number one, it's a volatile function. It recalculates whenever you make a change in the worksheet, not necessarily in the input value of the function itself. So it slows down the worksheet, especially if you have a huge worksheet. The second problem, what if you have a different setup below this list? I'm selecting this little list and I drag it and I want to put it somewhere under the list of names. Now what happens if I click on the down arrow and look at that? It includes values from the other setup which is not related to the list of names. I wish I could stop at the blank space denoting that this is the end of list. So two problems that we'll try to fix by using different techniques. In my next example, I'm going to fix the problem of volatility by using a different function than the offset function. I'll be using an index function. I'll be typing equal index and then I hit tab. I want to extract a value from column A, so I lock column A by hitting F4 and then I hit comma. What's the value you want to extract? I want to extract the last value in the list. So what if I count them? So if I type count A, that will be the row number returned to the index function. What would you like to count? I want to count column A. I lock it F4 and I close the bracket for the count A function. I close the bracket for the index function. When I hit enter, I extracted the last name. I can use this same index function that returned the last name in the list to return an entire range that I'll be storing in a defined name. So I'll be using the index function in a way that instead of returning Melissa, it returns the cell reference where the value Melissa exists. So let's do that, modifying the context of the index function to return a cell reference. I select the cell where I created my function, I hit F2, I click on cell A2, I type a colon, it adds the same reference one more time, so delete it and lock the first cell reference. I put my blinking cursor in A2, I hit F4 to lock it, and now if I hit enter, I will be extracting from A2 to Melissa, the cell reference having Melissa. If I hit enter, I extracted the entire range. Let's use it in a defined name. I select the first cell, I cut the function Control X and I have it in the clipboard. Now I can create my defined name by going to the Formulas tab of the ribbon, click on Define Name, and let's give it a name Employee. And in the Refers To box, delete whatever you have and paste the index function Control V. Hit OK. This function is not volatile. So if I select cell C2, I want to create my drop list. I'll be using the shortcut Alt-DL, Tab L tab. With my blinking cursor in the source box, I don't remember the name, so I have a nice way of memorizing the names by hitting the F3 key. It opens the paste name dialog box. Note that when you open it inside the data validation, it has just an OK and cancel because I'll be using it later on and it will show an extra button. Here I select employee, I hit OK and another OK, and I would have created my list of names. The last name is Melissa, so let's select Melissa. Now what if I add more values to the end of list of names? I click on the down pointing arrow there included in the data validation drop list. What about the other problem that we faced with the offset function? If I have a different setup, so what if I drag these values and put them here below? Now if I click on the down pointing arrow, I have the same problem. It included values from the other setup, which is not what I want. The index function is not a volatile function. It fixed one of the issues, but we still have another problem that we'll be fixing with the next technique. In my next example, I'll be using a very special function that extracts the position of the last value in the list of names. The name of this function is XMatch. So if I type equal XMatch and then I hit tab, usually we have to provide a lookup value. What are you looking for? But I'm going to skip this value and type a comma, and I'm looking only in column A, and I lock it by hitting F4 and I close the bracket for the XMatch function. When I hit enter, it's returning 7. That's the position of the first blank cell in column A. I'm interested in the position of the last value. So if I put my function in the edit mode by hitting F2 and I type -1, now I'm extracting the position of the last value in the list of names in column A. Combining the XMatch with the index function in the same context that I used before will enable me to create a named range that stores only the list of names and will stop at the blank. Let's do that. I'm going to put it in the edit mode. And before the XMatch, I'll be typing index. I hit tab and I want to look at the array in column A and I lock it F4 and I hit com. So I close the bracket for the index function, and when I hit enter, I would have extracted the last name. Instead of extracting the last name, I'll put it in the context that extracts a range. So I put my function in the edit mode by hitting F2, and before the index function, I put my blinking cursor, click on the first cell reference A2, and then I hit Shift colon. It adds the same cell, I have to delete it, and I need to lock cell A2 by hitting F4. Now if I hit enter, I would have extracted the entire list of names. Let's see what happens if I have a blank. I'm going to drag these two names and put them, leaving a blank in between. They are not added automatically to the list in case I have a different setup. If I bring them up and I drag them right after the previous list of names, then they have been added to the list. Now let's see what if I drag this setup. Assuming that I have a different setup below the list of names, then nothing is affected and we were able to solve the problems that we had with the index and the offset function. Let's save this function in a defined name. I click and drag to select the function in the formula bar, Control X to copy it, I hit enter. I open the defined name dialog box, Control Alt F3, I give it a name, Magic, and in the refers to box, I delete whatever I have, I paste the name, and then I hit OK. If I want to create my data validation drop list, I click on the Data tab of the ribbon, click on Data Validation. I want to allow a list. I put my blinking cursor in the source box. I don't remember the name, so I hit F3 and I select Magic, and then I hit OK and another OK, and I would have solved the problem. The last name is Steve and it doesn't include the setup below it. Let's select Nabil from the list. We use different techniques for creating named ranges. If you want to document these named ranges and get a printout of these names, you can extract them here in the worksheet. So I'm selecting cell G2 and I hit the F3 key. It opens the Paste Name dialog box, but this time it has an extra button, Paste List. If I click on this button, I would have extracted the list of names if I wish to print it. You may have noticed that most of the naming functionality revolves around the F3 key. The F3 key is like a Swiss Army knife. F3 opens the Paste Name dialog box. Control F3 opens the Name Manager. Alt F3 selects the name box. Control Alt F3 opens the Define Name dialog box. Control Shift F3 opens the Create Name from selection. So if you found value in this tutorial, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel and ring the bell to be notified when new tutorials are released. The best is yet to come. Thanks for watching and see you next time.